A man lost his life after Tesla's semi-autonomous driving system crashed into a trailer.
The incident comes as more automakers are investing heavily in self-driving technology,
raising concerns about letting computers take over the driving duties from humans.
Hack Triple J.
Now let's move away from the election just for a moment. Are you looking forward to driverless cars, or do they scare the hell out of you? Well, it's been revealed that a guy who died after crashing his car into a trailer was using a new Tesla autopilot technology. Now, this is the first fatal accident involving a car driving itself. So, is this a major setback for the future of driverless cars? Let's find out. Stephen Stockwell has the story.
This is a very important piece of news regarding Tesla.
It is, in fact, the first known fatal accident involving a vehicle being driven by itself by means of sophisticated computer software.
The Tesla was driving along a highway in Florida in autopilot mode when a truck turned in front of it.
The government is now investigating the design and performance of Tesla's system.
This gets to the heart of what many people have been talking about. What happens if one of them doesn't function properly?
Autopilot is getting better all the time, but it is not perfect and still requires the driver to remain alert.
The Tesla Model S is a publicly available electric car that comes with an autopilot function, which is kind of like an advanced cruise control that will drive you down the highway. In a statement, Tesla explained the accident happened because no one saw the truck.
Neither autopilot nor the driver noticed the white side of the tractor-trailer against a brightly lit sky, so the brake was not applied.
The car went under the truck's trailer, slicing off the roof before it crashed through a fence and into a power pole. Tesla does make the point that at this rate, there's only a fatal accident under autopilot every 130 million miles, which is below the average.
Among all vehicles in the US, there is a fatality every 94 million miles.
This accident actually happened in May, but last week, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration opened an investigation to figure out if Tesla's autopilot is to blame.
The Office of Defects Investigation will examine the design and performance of the automated driving systems in use at the time of the crash.
They're going to be looking into the software currently running on the 25,000 Tesla Model S cars currently cruising around the US. Now, there have already been crashes involving this autopilot feature, like this one from Germany, where the car hits a broken-down truck on the freeway. But until recently, they'd been non-fatal.
It is important to note that Tesla disables autopilot by default and requires explicit acknowledgement that the system is new technology and still in a public beta phase before it can be enabled.
This line from Tesla is really interesting because they point out they're still working on the autopilot feature. At the moment, when you switch it on, it makes you confirm that the car's actions are your responsibility.
Tesla says drivers using autopilot in any of its cars must acknowledge that the system is an assist feature that requires you to keep your hands on the steering wheel at all times.
Now, it is really important to remember, Tom, this doesn't mean that the Teslas are broken. And the Traffic Safety Administration in the US is very keen to point out this investigation is just trying to work out if there is potentially a defect in the kind of semi-autonomous driving offered by the cars.
Thank you, Stephen Stockwell. Let's find out what this fatal crash means for the development and the introduction of the driverless car. Gerard Waldron is the Managing Director of the Australian Road Research Board, a road and transport research consultancy. Gerard, thanks for joining us. Is this death a setback to the advance of driverless cars?
Look, I don't think that it is overall. Certainly, you know, our hearts go out to the family and friends of the deceased, and you certainly wouldn't wish this on anyone. But at the same time, the operation of driverless vehicles and the future of them is going to be overwhelmingly life-saving. About 90% of crashes, deaths and injuries that occur on our roads are the result of human error, and any system that can reduce that is going to have a hugely beneficial impact.
Okay, now this wasn't a driverless car per se. This was a Tesla car that had this autopilot mode that had actually only been available since late last year. Yep. But surely I imagine the fact that it failed to sense this trailer coming across the road, that sensor technology would be similar to what's used in driverless cars to read what's going on around them. So isn't that quite concerning?
Well, it is and it isn't. At this stage, you know, the Tesla isn't a full driverless car, so it's operating with less sensors and less sophisticated sensors than you would anticipate for a vehicle that's completely reliant on them. As a level 2 car, this is meant to be under the control of the driver, the human driver, and all of the systems that were switched on in this car are meant to just be there to assist the driver.
But still, they didn't work. They didn't pick up this trailer. Where did it go wrong? And is that technology being used on other driverless cars?
Yeah, look, I don't know where it went wrong. I mean, obviously there's going to be quite an investigation in the USA, probably much akin to a coroner's inquest would be in Australia. So I'm sure that we'll learn a lot from the information that's going to come out of that. And I'm sure that all of the automotive industry is going to learn a lot out of that as well.
Okay, and where is the development of the driverless car up to at the moment?
Well, right now we've got a lot of the technologies that form the foundation of driverless vehicles are already appearing on models that you can buy today. They're coming in as driver assistance systems and with a limited sort of capability compared with how they'll operate once we go to fully driverless. But the predictions are that, within 20 years, we should have cars with no steering wheel in them. I think you'd see some applications of cars without steering wheels in 10 years even.
Right, okay. So the technology that we're seeing in this Tesla is certainly on that trajectory. It's part of this journey of going towards fully driverless cars.
Yeah. And the technology's moving very, very quickly, as you would imagine. And even the Tesla's had a couple of upgrades of the software that's running on its vehicles since its introduction last November.
Okay, and so what is the next step from where we're at right now in terms of this technology?
Look, I think there are a couple of paths, but one of the most useful to us, I think, will be this conditional automation. The demonstrations that Volvo will be doing in Gothenburg next January. We'll have 100 Volvos being driven by ordinary members of the public, and they will be allowed to operate in completely autonomous mode while they're on the Gothenburg Ring Road.
Wow.
So the human driver will get them down the on-ramp and onto the freeway, and at that point the paddles behind the steering wheel will glow blue and the driver can elect to go into autonomous mode. And this will be fully autonomous mode, not like the Tesla where you are still the driver. Volvo are saying they will be the driver of the car while it's operating in that mode. And so you can then read a book or, deal with whatever other email or anything else.
On the text line, self-driving cars will allow us to work much further from home. Someone else says, natural selection at its finest. Only you are responsible for your life whilst operating a vehicle. Someone else says, how many people have died with no autopilot, which I guess, Gerard, gets to the heart of the real risks that you take when you go out onto the road.
Indeed. And look, I think that Tesla is already indicating that they've done more kilometres without a death or an injury just in the time that the autopilot's been out there, than an equivalent sort of population would suffer at least one death, or in fact closer to two.
Yeah, and I guess you're talking about the average human error leading to an accident there. I guess a lot of people still need to be convinced that even though human error is the main cause of accidents, that you can still replace a human being, because we are generally so sensitive and often, but not always, very perceptive to what's going on around us, and stories like this really make people wonder, which is why it's so interesting to discuss it right now. Gerard, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
It's been a pleasure, Tom.
That's Gerard Waldron, who's the Managing Director of the Australian Road Research Board. Tom, the Tesla only uses camera. Autonomous cars will use things like radar and talk to other cars on the road. Giles in Rosanna, a bit of an expert on driverless cars. Someone else says, Tesla's autopilot isn't supposed to be a complete self-driving car, unlike other solutions. I hope this isn't taken too far out of context, and I think we gave it plenty of context there. Fascinating to speak to you about the self-driving car and that autopilot function, letting that drive it down. We'll keep watching that as the technology evolves, and thank you so much for all your calls and texts on the election. Of course, we will continue to keep you up to date as we get more and more results. It's going to be a fascinating and long ride. Thank you so much for joining us. KLP is up next with Good Nights After the News, and she's got new music from Northeast Party House. I'll catch you later.